Your brain blocks superhuman strength. The myth of superhuman strength. There's a story that's almost become legend. A man crashes his car, and his child is trapped underneath. Without thinking, he sprints to the wreck, plants his hands on the metal frame, and lifts. Neighbors say he raised nearly a ton of weight off the ground just long enough for someone to pull the kid free. Doctors later found he'd torn multiple muscles and dislocated his shoulder, but at that moment, he didn't care. He moved the car. And that single act made people wonder, do we all have hidden superhuman strength waiting to burst out when we need it? Here's where the myth kicks in. Most people think adrenaline creates strength, like flipping on a hidden power mode. That's not exactly true. Adrenaline doesn't magically turn you into the Hulk. What it really does is far stranger and far more scientific. It removes your brain's safety brakes. Under normal conditions, your brain acts like a cautious driver behind the wheel of a powerful car. The engine, your muscles, can generate enormous force, but your brain keeps a foot on the brake pedal, never letting you hit top speed. That's because strength isn't limited by muscle alone. It's regulated by a neural governor that decides how much power you're allowed to use before you risk tearing yourself apart. Every time you lift a heavy box, sprint upstairs, or throw a punch, that internal monitor is making calculations. How much tension can the tendons handle? How close is this to causing damage? Most of us only ever access about 60% of our true muscular potential. The rest stays locked away, not because we're lazy, but because our nervous system is protecting us from ourselves. The ironic truth is, our muscles could do far more than our brain is willing to let them. But every rule has exceptions. When the brain believes survival is at stake, when life or death feels seconds away, it can temporarily turn off that limiter. Adrenaline floods your bloodstream, your senses sharpen, blood flow shifts from your digestive system to your limbs, and pain dulls just long enough for you to perform the impossible. That's how someone can lift a car, run on a broken leg, or fight long after sustaining severe injuries. It's not the birth of a superpower, it's the brain's emergency override kicking in. Of course, that override comes with a price. Because when those biological limits vanish, the damage becomes real. The torn ligaments, the ruptured fibers, the extreme fatigue afterward, all of it reveals that the strength we unleashed wasn't free. The body pays dearly for the moments when the mind removes its guardrails. And that raises a deeper question. If our brains are built to hold us back, what happens when we learn to push past that safety system on purpose? Could we train ourselves to access more of that hidden strength safely, or are those protective walls there for good reason? That's the mystery behind every extraordinary human performance, from the mother who lifts a car to the athlete breaking world records. It's not about defying biology, it's about negotiating with it. Pain, fear, and restraint aren't flaws in the system. They're the safeguards that kept our ancestors alive. But now, as science peels back those mechanisms, we're starting to see what happens when we cross nature's built-in red line. In this video, we'll explore that line, how the brain limits power, what happens when adrenaline overrides it, and why chasing that extra surge can blur the boundary between heroism and harm. Because the myth of superhuman strength isn't about what we gain. It's about what the brain is willing to risk when everything's on the line. Your muscles are lying to you. When you think of strength, you probably picture muscle size, the biceps that stretch a shirt sleeve with the powerlifter straining under absurd weights. But here's the twist. Those muscles aren't what's holding back your strength. Your brain is. To understand that, you need to separate actual strength from accessible strength. Actual strength is what your muscles could theoretically produce if every fiber fired at once. Accessible strength is how much of that potential your brain lets you use. Right now, if you're an average person, your nervous system only allows about 60% of your total output. It's like having a high-performance engine capped at half throttle. That invisible limiter is often called the central governor. It's not one specific part of the brain, but a network, primarily the motor cortex, spinal cord feedback loops, and sensory centers that constantly monitor tension, pain, heat, and fatigue. Think of it as a risk management system. When you lift something heavy, the governor calculates whether that load might tear muscle fibers or overstretch tendons. If the risk looks too high, it automatically reduces muscle activation, no matter how much you want to keep pushing. You can scream, strain, or tell yourself you've got one more rep. But if that neural circuit says no, the full power never arrives. Your brain isn't being cowardly, it's being protective. The connective tissues in your body, like tendons and fascia, can only handle so much. The average human tendon can endure forces up to about 1.5 times body weight before damage begins. Full muscle activation could generate 3, maybe 4 times that. If you ever actually hit 100% output, you wouldn't walk away stronger. You'd end up in a hospital with shredded fibers and torn joints. The pain that accompanies overexertion is the earliest warning signal that this structural failure is coming. Athletes, interestingly, live closer to this threshold than most people. Years of training don't exactly build supernatural muscles, they train the governor. Repeated safe exposure to stress tells the brain, I've been here before and I survived. Bit by bit, the nervous system allows slightly more power, a few more fibers recruited, a higher tolerance for lactic acid buildup. The brain becomes more confident that these stress levels won't cause disaster, so it eases the brakes. That's why elite performers can access maybe 80 or even 90% of their potential power without catastrophic failure. It's not brute force, it's trust built into the neurology. But here's the fascinating part. The central governor doesn't just limit strength to protect tissues, it's deeply tied to your sense of fatigue. That burning sensation in your legs during a sprint, it's not direct proof that you have no energy. It's your brain interpreting chemical signals and choosing to downregulate effort before things get dangerous. In ultra-endurance athletes, studies show that the brain's perception of fatigue can precede actual physical depletion by hours. Essentially, the mind says stop, long before the body has to stop. It's error prevention disguised as exhaustion. There's a balance, though. That safety mechanism keeps us alive, but it also hides what's possible. Under ordinary conditions, we'll never feel what total capacity truly is. Only rare life or death moments, when adrenaline surges and logic takes a back seat, disable that circuit. That's when people lift cars or sprint on fractured bones. It's not because the muscles suddenly grew stronger, it's because the nervous system temporarily forgot to hold back. However, the cost of those moments can be brutal. When the governor is fully bypassed, you unleash force far beyond what your tendons or ligaments can tolerate. Reports from emergency rescues or combat incidents often describe individuals who later discovered pulled muscles, broken bones, or torn connective tissue, injuries they didn't even feel until minutes later. That's what complete neuromuscular freedom looks like. Unfiltered strength followed by biological chaos. If we could somehow tap that potential safely, human performance would look entirely different. But nature knows what it's doing. Our bodies were never optimized for maximum power output. They were designed for repeat survival. A muscle that holds a cliff edge once and tears apart isn't as useful as one that can climb again tomorrow. Evolution favored endurance and protection over raw output. The governor is the deal we sign without knowing it. Less power in exchange for more longevity. Still, that doesn't stop scientists and athletes from wondering, can you negotiate with the governor? Can mental training convince the brain to lift the safety lock just enough to reach higher performance without self-destruction? The evidence says yes, to a point. Controlled stress training, mental rehearsal, and gradual low progression seem to recalibrate where the governor intervenes. The key is incremental tolerance, not defiance. The body learns that it's safe, and the brain updates its protection thresholds accordingly. But before we get into how to trick that system, we need to explore what happens during those rare moments when it shuts off entirely, the brain's version of an emergency override. Because while most people assume adrenaline gives them power, the truth is it simply silences fear, pain, and hesitation long enough to remove the brakes. And once that happens, the results are as dangerous as they are extraordinary. Adrenaline, the brain's emergency override. When the central governor steps aside, one chemical takes the wheel, adrenaline. It's the body's built-in emergency protocol, released in seconds when the brain decides survival comes first. You feel it as that full-body jolt, the surge in your chest, the rush in your ears, the sudden clarity that almost feels superhuman. But at a biological level, it's a highly coordinated chain reaction designed for one purpose, give you just enough power to escape or fight before the system collapses. Here's how it starts. The moment your brain registers a threat, pain, fear, danger, the hypothalamus sends an electrical signal to the sympathetic nervous system, to your adrenal medulla, tiny glands that sit like caps on your kidneys. Within seconds, they flood your bloodstream with adrenaline or epinephrine. This hormone binds to dozens of receptors across your body, triggering a synchronized response. Heart rate climbs. Airways expand. Blood vessels constrict in your skin and stomach, redirecting flow to your muscles. Glycogen in your liver breaks into glucose, pouring instant fuel into your system. Oxygen, sugar, and speed become your top priorities. Digestion, reasoning, and even pain perception drop down the list. At the same time, tiny shifts happen in your brain. The amygdala, which processes fear, lights up. The prefrontal cortex, the part that usually slows you down with logic, quiets. In other words, the system suppresses hesitation. The entire organism shifts from preserving energy to using it, no questions asked. That's what people mean when they say they acted without thinking. They really didn't. The rational parts were offline, replaced by ancient instinct. Now, about that myth that adrenaline creates strength, it doesn't. What it really does is clear the interference. It dials down the pain signals that would normally send stopping instructions to the central nervous system. Think of it as pulling the fuses on the alarm system. The muscles can now contract harder because the return messages screaming "stop" aren't getting through. At the same time, adrenaline activates more motor units, groups of muscle fibers linked to single neurons, letting you recruit more of your existing strength. Normally, you're capped somewhere around 60% of potential output. Under a full adrenaline flood, you might hit 80, maybe 90 for a few chaotic seconds. It's a dangerous privilege powered by chemistry. That pain-numbing effect is one of adrenaline's most deceptive tricks. It alters how your spinal cord and brain interpret pain signals, effectively raising your pain thresholds so your mind doesn't panic too early. Soldiers, first responders, and accident survivors often describe being shot, burned, or broken without realizing it until much later. Their bodies were in shock, yes, but chemically speaking, adrenaline had hijacked the sensory network, prioritizing movement over preservation. You can act with precision while profoundly injured because the system temporarily vetoes the feedback that would tell you to stop. But for every benefit, there's a price tag. The fight-or-flight state was built for brief emergencies, not extended battles. Once the danger passes, adrenaline levels crash. Your blood sugar plummets, leaving you shaky, nauseous, or exhausted. Muscles that were flooded with calcium ions during contraction become acidified with lactic buildup. That's the burn you feel minutes later, only amplified because you exceeded safe output limits. The cardiovascular strain also doesn't vanish harmlessly. Prolonged high heart rate and blood pressure can tear microvessels, creating inflammation that lingers long after the hero moment ends. That's why people perform miraculous rescues or feats and then collapse immediately afterward. Their bodies weren't built to sustain that state. They were borrowing tomorrow's strength for today's emergency. The adrenaline spike gives you a brief window of heightened power at the expense of stability. When that hormone fades, tremors set in, clarity drains away, and pain floods back into awareness. Doctors see it constantly. Individuals who function flawlessly through severe trauma suddenly faint once help arrives. It's not weakness, it's the body collecting the bill. Let's look at a real scenario to make this concrete. In several documented cases of hysterical strength, witnesses have reported parents lifting cars off trapped children. Medical follow-ups tell the missing half of the story. Torn pectoral muscles, ruptured tendons, spinal strain, months of recovery. The adrenaline stopped them from feeling any of it in the moment, but the physical damage was immense. What looked like heroism was actually the body overriding its own emergency protocols. The power was real, just unsustainable. Interestingly, researchers find that smaller controlled doses of adrenaline, like those triggered in sports or intense focus, can sharpen performance without total system overload. That's the sweet spot athletes train toward. They practice activating portions of the stress response without tipping into chaos. Controlled breathing, visualization, and pre-competition rituals help them trigger small adrenaline spikes that heighten reaction and focus while staying below the destructive threshold. It's bioengineering through practice, using chemistry responsibly instead of reactively. But in untrained settings, adrenaline is closer to chaos. The body isn't deciding based on odds, it's deciding based on fear. The flood of energy, the almost supernatural clarity, feels empowering, but it's built on cutting corners the body uses to protect itself. Blood thickens to carry more oxygen, which increases clotting risk. Peripheral vision narrows to focus on threats, which means tunnel vision, great for predators, terrible for modern hazards. You get stronger reactions at the cost of judgment and coordination. That's what makes the hormone both miraculous and dangerous. It's not a power-up. It's not a power-up. It's an emergency patch. There's also the emotional aftermath. Once adrenaline clears, cortisol steps in, prolonging alertness and repair. Many people report feeling emotionally drained, irritable, or even euphoric after near-death or high-intensity moments. That roller coaster isn't psychological weakness. It's the chemical seesaw between arousal and recovery. Your body has to restabilize all the systems that were thrown into overdrive. Heart rate, respiration, digestion, temperature regulation, all while processing shock and injury data newly arriving from the nervous system. That's why hands shake and knees buckle even after the crisis is over. The adrenaline didn't leave you superhuman. It left you temporarily broken, waiting to be rebuilt. If the central governor keeps us at 60% to guarantee survival, then adrenaline is the override switch labeled ignore all warnings. It's remarkable and necessary, but brutally temporary. Every time it flips, damage control begins almost immediately. So when someone asks if adrenaline grants superhuman strength, the real answer is yes, but only if you're willing to pay the biological price afterward. The irony is that evolution designed this system not to make us heroes, but to let us survive a single encounter and limp away to safety. It's emergency power, not upgrade mode. The stories of impossible strength aren't proof of limitless potential. They're proof that our limits exist for a reason. Because every time adrenaline pulls the guardrails off, it teaches the same hard lesson. Removing pain and fear doesn't make you invincible. It just hides how close you are to breaking. Section 3. Pain is the body's warning system. Pain gets a bad reputation. It's a thing we spend our lives trying to avoid. But biologically, pain isn't punishment. It's protection. It's the body's most ancient alarm system, designed not to ruin your day, but to save your life. Every sting, burn, or ache is data, an urgent message from one part of your body to another saying, if you keep doing that, something's about to break. The sensation of pain starts with tiny sensors called nociceptors. They sit everywhere, on your skin and your joints, around muscles, and they don't actually feel hurt. They feel change. A sudden rise in temperature, pressure, or chemical irritation triggers these nerve endings. Once activated, they fire electrical signals up to the spinal cord, sometimes skipping your conscious brain entirely. That's why you yank your hand away from a hot pan before you even realize it burns you. That reflex isn't a thought, it's a circuit, a survival fast lane that doesn't wait for permission. From the spinal cord, those pain signals branch in two directions. One path heads straight to motor neurons to pull you out of danger. The other climbs to the brain, where it gets translated into a feeling. Throbbing, sharp, dull, searing. The brain layers emotion onto that signal. Fear, frustration, urgency, because emotion motivates behavior. Pain isn't just a physical alarm, it's also a call to action. Without it, humans wouldn't survive long. There are people born with congenital insensitivity to pain, and while that might sound like a superpower, most don't live past early adulthood. They walk on broken bones, lean into open flames, or overheat without realizing it. Pain, unpleasant as it feels, is the price of staying intact. Now, when we push ourselves, running, lifting, climbing, those same nociceptors come online for a different reason. They're not warning of immediate danger. They're reporting load. The burning in your muscles during a workout isn't damage, it's communication. It tells the brain we're working hard, but still okay. The central nervous system interprets this flood of data and decides how much longer it's safe to continue. Some signals, like joint pain, suggest real structural risk. Others, like lactic acid burn, are tolerable stress. The real skill of any trained athlete is knowing the difference. Sports science calls this awareness interoception, the ability to read your body's internal feedback accurately. Elite endurance athletes develop it like a language. They learn which sensations mean stop and which simply mean discomfort. That's why runners can sustain pain that would make a casual jogger quit. They've studied their pain rather than fleeing from it. Their minds interpret it not as threat but as performance data. Oxygen debt rising, muscle fatigue approaching, heart rate holding steady. Pain ceases to be an enemy and becomes a dashboard. The problem for many of us is that pain and fear travel together. The moment we feel that burn, our brain predicts catastrophe. We quit not because we've hit our true limit, but because we're afraid of reaching it. That's efficient from an evolutionary standpoint. Better safe than snapped tendon, but it also means we rarely explore where the real threshold lies. The trick isn't to ignore pain, it's to listen with context. Ask, is this warning or is this growth? There's a cultural misconception that enduring pain always means progress. No pain, no gain sounds tough, but it's physiologically wrong. Pain is non-linear. Chronic pain doesn't build strength. It rewires the nervous system to be more sensitive, not less. Ignoring serious pain doesn't make you resilient. It converts temporary warning signals into long-term dysfunction. Athletes who train through injury often pay the price later with degenerative joints or nerve damage. The ego wants to push through, but biology always collects the debt. What modern neuroscience tells us is that pain tolerance isn't about dulling sensation, it's about interpreting it. The brain can modulate pain signals based on attention, expectation, and emotion. If you believe the pain has purpose, say finishing a marathon or rescuing someone, the brain releases endorphins and enkephalins that bind to the same receptors as opioids, muting discomfort. That's partly why context changes everything. A cut during an intense game might go unnoticed, while the same cut at home feels unbearable. The chemical meaning of pain shifts with narrative. But what happens when those systems that moderate pain go quiet completely, like during an adrenaline surge? That's when trouble starts. Without feedback, you lose your body's early warning sensors. You can sprint on torn muscles, run barefoot over glass, or fight with broken bones because the system designed to stop you has gone offline. The pain will return later, magnified, but by then the damage is done. The protective loop only works when it's allowed to speak. So understanding pain isn't about overcoming weakness, it's about decoding communication. Pain evolved as a stopgap between damaging behavior and irreversible failure. The ache in your back when you lift wrong is your first line of engineering defense. The pulse in your chest when you overexert tells your oxygen delivery is at its limit. Every warning buys you time to correct course before something snaps. You can think of pain as the body's own failsafe, triggered just shy of failure, not after it. For centuries, philosophers and physicians viewed pain purely as suffering to be anesthetized or eliminated. Modern science reframed it as feedback, part of a dynamic learning system. It doesn't just tell you where you're weak, it teaches you where you're strong. Controlled exposure to manageable pain through training, recovery, or therapy recalibrates the nervous system, proving that the signal isn't the enemy, only the interpretation is. And that's why endurance athletes, climbers, or even people in rehabilitation talk about making peace with pain rather than erasing it. The confusing part is that the same signal can mean triumph in one context and disaster in another. That's why separating productive pain from destructive pain is the real art of performance. Productive pain comes with adaptation. Destructive pain ends adaptation. One pushes cellular growth, the other triggers degeneration. The more you tune into the difference, the smarter your nervous system becomes. Pain, then, isn't the wall between us and superhuman effort. It's the map showing exactly where that wall stands. Without it, strength turns suicidal. With it, we can explore the edge safely, nudge it, expand it, but not tumble over it. And that circles back to the brain's true purpose in limiting power. Pain is its megaphone, the loud announcement that the governor is engaged, telling you to step back before catastrophe. When people learn to read that language instead of silencing it, they don't just perform better, they survive longer. Because in the end, pain isn't the villain of human potential. It's the narrator, keeping us informed about the cost of every ounce of power we try to unleash. The psychology of pain barriers.